The phone rang at 6:47 in the morning. I remember because I was standing at my kitchen window watching the frost melt off the bird feeder, holding a mug of coffee that had already gone lukewarm. I'm not a late sleeper, 63 years old, and I still wake up before the sun like I'm heading down to the lumber yard at 5 a.m. Even though I sold that business 11 years ago. It was my daughter-in-law. She didn't say hello. She didn't ask how I was. She said, "Dad, the property taxes are due. Did you wire the money or not?" I put the mug down. I felt something cold spread to my chest, slower than I expected. I'd been waiting for this call for about a week, ever since I asked them when the anniversary dinner was going to be and got the answer I got. "Honey," I said, "I think we need to have a conversation." She made a sound through the phone, halfway between a laugh and a sigh. The kind of sound a woman makes when she thinks her father-in-law is being slow on the uptake. "Dad, we don't have time for a conversation. The county sent a notice. It's $11,400. You always pay it by the 15th. It's the 12th. I looked at the calendar on my wall. It was indeed the 12th. "Hudson there?" I asked. "That's my son, Hudson Beauregard, named after my own father, a man who built houses with his hands and never asked anyone for a dime in his entire life. He's still asleep. He had a late night. Dad, will you wire the money?" I took a breath. I looked at the bird feeder. I looked at the photograph on the windowsill of my late wife, Coralie, who passed 8 years ago this March. I imagined what she'd say to me right now. I knew exactly what she'd say. She'd say, "Buford, it's about time." "I'll handle it," I told my daughter-in-law. "Don't you worry about it. You will have a nice day." She hung up without saying goodbye. She'd been hanging up without saying goodbye for about 4 years now. I never said a word about it. I stood there in the kitchen for a long time. Then I picked up the phone and called my attorney. Now I want to back up, because if I just tell you what happened next, you're going to think I'm a monster, or you're going to think my son is a monster. And neither of those things is quite true. The truth is messier than that, and the truth always is. My name is Buford Halloran. I grew up in a small town in central Tennessee where everybody worked with their hands or worked with the land. And if you didn't do either of those things, you weren't really considered an adult yet. My father owned a small hardware store on Main Street, and my mother taught second grade. I had one brother who died of leukemia when I was 9. After that, it was just me, and my parents poured everything they had into making sure I had what they called opportunities. I had opportunities. I went to college on a partial scholarship and worked construction every summer to pay the rest. I met Coralie my junior year in a diner where she was waiting tables to put herself through nursing school. We got married 6 months after I graduated. We had a son the next year, and we named him Hudson. I want to tell you that Coralie and I were good parents. I want to believe that. We loved that boy more than anything in the world. He was our only child after 2 miscarriages and a stillbirth that nearly broke my wife's heart. So when Hudson came along healthy and pink and screaming, we decided that nothing bad was ever going to happen to him if we could help it. That was our first mistake. I built up a business over 25 years, a lumber yard and millwork shop that supplied half the contractors in 3 counties. I worked 12-hour days. I missed birthdays. I missed school plays. I told myself I was doing it for the family, and maybe I was, but I think a lot of fathers tell themselves that, and it's only ever half true. When Hudson was 16, I bought him a brand new pickup truck. When he was 18 and didn't get into the college he wanted, I made some calls and got him in anyway. When he flunked out his sophomore year, I paid for him to enroll at a different school. When he graduated, finally, at 25, I gave him a job at the lumber yard. He showed up late on his first day. He showed up late every day for the next 2 years until I had to let him go. And even then, I didn't really let him go. I just stopped putting him on the schedule and kept paying him. Are you starting to see the picture? I am too. It took me a long time to see it. He met his wife at a wedding in Nashville when he was 28. Her name is Sailor and she came from money. Not the kind of money my family had, but real money. The kind that comes with country club memberships and family lake houses and grandmothers who collect porcelain birds. Her father is a cardiologist. Her mother is on the board of 3 charities. They live in a house that has a name. The house is called Magnolia Run. I liked Sailor at first. She was polite. She made eye contact. She brought me a tin of homemade cookies the first time we met. And I thought, well, this is a fine young woman. Hudson is lucky. 6 months later, they were engaged. Sailor's parents threw the engagement party at Magnolia Run. There were maybe 120 people there, mostly her family's friends. But I went with my brother Sutton, and we had a good time, more or less. I remember Sailor's father, the cardiologist, putting his arm around my shoulder and saying, "Beaufort, we are so glad to be joining families with you." I remember thinking he was a decent man. I paid for the wedding. The entire wedding. $87,000. Sailor's parents offered to split it, but Hudson called me one night and said, "Dad, her folks are going to look down on us if we don't carry our weight." So I carried our weight. I carried all of it. Coralie was already sick by then, undergoing treatment, and I figured this was the last big thing I'd do for my boy while his mother was still alive to see it. Coralie made it to the wedding. She was beautiful that day. She cried during the ceremony. She danced with Hudson during the mother-son dance, and even though she could barely stand by the end of the song, she didn't sit down until the music stopped. 3 months later, she was gone. After Coralie died, I didn't know what to do with myself. I sold the lumber yard the following year. I didn't need the money, but I didn't need the work either. Not anymore. I bought a small ranch outside of town, 15 acres, a house with a porch and a creek running through the back pasture. I figured I'd raise a few cattle, fix up the barn, maybe get a dog. I figured I had earned a quiet decade. Hudson and Sailor moved into a condo in the city that I had bought them as a wedding gift, a 2-bedroom in a nice building. I paid the mortgage. I paid the HOA. I paid the property taxes. I paid for the new furniture when Sailor decided the old furniture didn't match her vision. I paid for the trip to Italy for their first anniversary. I paid for the kitchen renovation, which cost $46,000, and which Sailor described to her mother, in my hearing, as modest. I want to be clear about something. I never resented any of it. Not really. I had the money. I had no one else to spend it on. I had a son and a daughter-in-law, and they were the only family I had left. And if writing checks was how I kept them in my life, well, that was a fair trade. That was what I told myself. I told myself that for almost 6 years. The day everything changed was a Tuesday in October. I had been trying to reach Hudson all week because their wedding anniversary was coming up, and I wanted to take them out to a steakhouse downtown that Coralie and I used to love. It would be their 7th anniversary. I had a card in my pocket and a check for $2,000 folded inside it. Nothing big, just a little something. Sailor finally picked up on the 3rd try. She sounded out of breath. I could hear music in the background. "Hi, Dad. Sorry, we're at brunch." "Brunch? It's 3 in the afternoon. It's the anniversary brunch, Dad. Didn't Hudson tell you?" I felt my hand tighten around the phone. "What anniversary brunch?" There was a long pause. I could hear someone laughing in the background, a woman's voice, sharp and high. "Oh," she said. "Oh, Dad, we did a little thing yesterday. Just family. Just close friends. It was very last minute. Yesterday. It was a brunch, like a backyard thing at my parents'. We didn't really invite anyone. It was tiny." I asked her how many people were at this tiny backyard brunch. She hesitated. Then she said, "Maybe 70 or so. 70 people at a tiny family brunch to celebrate the 7th anniversary of the wedding I had paid for, with the bride I had welcomed into my family." with my son, my only son, my only family. And I had not been invited. I asked her very quietly why I had not been invited. She laughed. She actually laughed. She actually laughed. Oh, Dad, don't be like that. Hudson said you'd be working on the ranch. You know how you are about that property. And we figured you wouldn't want to drive in. And honestly, you know my dad's friends are a little stuffy and you're always more comfortable in jeans. And we didn't want you to feel out of place. It was really a small thing. We'll do something with you separately. We'll come out to the ranch maybe next month. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Dad, are you there? Look, my mimosa's getting warm. I have to go. Talk soon. Love you. She hung up. I sat on my porch for a long time after that. The sun was getting low. The cattle were down by the creek. I held the card with the check in it, and I looked at it, and I thought about my wife, my Coralie, who had loved that boy so much, who had danced with him at his wedding when she was dying, and I thought about how if she had been alive, she would have been at that brunch. They would never have left her out. They would never have decided she didn't fit in with her father's stuffy friends. They would have wanted her there. But me? I was just the man with the checkbook, and the checkbook didn't need to come to brunch. I want to tell you what I did next, because this is the part I am most proud of, and also the part I am least proud of, and I am still not sure which one is the truth. I did not call Hudson. I did not yell. I did not write a long, emotional email. I did none of the things a hurt father might do. I went inside. I poured myself 2 fingers of bourbon. I sat at my kitchen table with a yellow legal pad, and I made a list. I made a list of everything I was paying for. The condo mortgage, the condo HOA, the condo property taxes, the condo utilities, the condo insurance, Sailor's car lease, Hudson's car lease, the country club membership at Magnolia Hills, the one Hudson insisted he needed for networking, even though he hadn't worked a day since I gave him that job he showed up late to. Their health insurance, both of them because Hudson had quit his last attempted job 4 months in and didn't have benefits. The credit card I had given Hudson when he was 22, which I had never closed, which he was still using. The annual deposit I made into Sailor's household account, $24,000 a year, no questions asked. I added it all up. The number was just over $240,000 a year. I sat there looking at that number for a long time. Then I called my attorney. His name is Witt. He's been my lawyer for 31 years. He answered on the second ring, even though it was after hours, because that's the kind of man he is. I told him what had happened. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he said, "Beaufort, I have been waiting for this phone call for 10 years. I laughed. It was the first time I'd laughed in a week. Witt and I met the next morning. We spent 4 hours in his office. By lunchtime, we had a plan. Here's what I owned that nobody really knew I owned. I owned the condo. Outright. I had never put it in their names. I had let Hudson think it was theirs because that's what he wanted to believe, and I had never corrected him. The deed was in a trust, and I was the only trustee. I also owned the building the condo was in. I had bought it 18 years ago as an investment, before Hudson was even thinking about getting married. 12 units, all occupied, all paying rent. Hudson and Sailor were the only tenants who didn't pay rent because they didn't know they were tenants. I owned the cars they drove. The leases were in my name. They had never bothered to ask whose name was on the title. I owned the credit card. Of course I owned the credit card. The country club membership was in my name. The health insurance was on my policy. The household account was a checking account I funded that I could shut off with one phone call. Witt drafted everything, the eviction notice, the notice that the leases would not be renewed, the credit card cancellation, the insurance cancellation, the notice from the country club, the closing of the household account. We dated everything carefully. We had everything overnighted to the condo and to Hudson's mailbox at the country club, where he checked it most often. I did not call my son. I did not call my daughter-in-law. I did not send a goodbye letter or a final lecture. I had spent 35 years lecturing that boy with my checkbook, and he had never heard a word of it. There was nothing more to say. I went back to the ranch. I checked on the cattle. I sat on the porch. I waited. The first phone call came at 6:47 the next morning. That's the call I started this story with. My daughter-in-law asking about the property taxes. She didn't know yet. The notices hadn't arrived. I told her I'd handle it. I lied. I had already handled it. I had lied. I had already handled it. I had handled all of it. The notices arrived that afternoon. I know because at 3:18 p.m. my phone started ringing and didn't stop. I let it ring. I had told Whit I would not answer for 48 hours. He had advised this. He said, Beeford, they will scream and they will plead and they will threaten and you must let it all roll past you. You don't need to defend yourself. You don't owe anyone an explanation. This is a legal process now and they will figure that out. The voicemails were something. I saved them. I still have them. Hudson, at 3:21, Dad, what the hell is this? Did you send us an eviction notice? Is this some kind of joke? Call me back. Sailor, at 3:34, Dad, there has to be a mistake. The credit card just got declined at the grocery store. I'm standing in the parking lot. What is going on? Hudson, at 4:06, Dad. Pick up the phone. This isn't funny. The lease company just called about the cars. Sailor's mother at 4:48. This one I did not expect. Beaufort, this is Camilla. I don't know what has gotten into you, but you cannot do this to my daughter. She is my child. She is your son's wife. We need to sit down like adults. Hudson at 6:13. Dad, please, please call me back. Sailor is crying. The boys at the country club just called and said my account was closed. Dad, what did we do? Whatever it is, we'll talk about it. Just please call me back. I sat on the porch and listened to that last one. Whatever it is, we'll talk about it. As if he didn't know. As if 70 people in a backyard hadn't been an answer all by itself. I did not call him back. The next morning, day 2, Hudson drove out to the ranch. I saw him coming up the driveway from a long way off. The dust kicked up behind his car, which, by the way, was technically my car. He parked crooked. He got out without closing the door. He came up to the porch and he stood there at the bottom of the steps and he looked at me and I had not seen my son cry since he was 15 years old. Dad, he said, what did I do? I want you to know that I almost broke. I almost did. He's my boy. He's my only boy. He's my only boy. He looks like his mother around the eyes, and he always has. And when he stood there at the bottom of those porch steps with his hands hanging at his sides, I almost stood up and pulled him into a hug and told him to forget the whole thing. We'd figure it out. I was sorry. Come inside. Have some coffee. But I didn't. Because if I did, in 6 months we'd be right back where we were. And in 6 years he'd be burying me. Still waiting for the checks to clear. Still not invited to the brunch. I said, Hudson, sit down. He sat down on the top step. I said, you at a brunch? He looked at me. Slowly, he understood. I watched it happen across his face. The brunch. The 70th person who was not me. Dad, he said, that wasn't anything. That was Sailor's mom's idea. I didn't even want to do it. You didn't even want to do it? No. Dad, I swear, I was going to call you. When? This weekend. Hudson, I said, your anniversary was Saturday. The brunch was Sunday. It is Tuesday. He didn't answer. I said, son, I want you to listen to me because I am going to say this one time and I am not going to say it again. You and Sailor are grown adults. You have been grown adults for a long time. I have been treating you like children because I was scared that if I stopped, you would not love me anymore. And I want you to know that I have figured something out this week. I have figured out that you do not love me anyway. You love what I do for you, and that is not the same thing. And it has not the same thing for a long time. He started to argue. I held up a hand. I am not finished. I am not throwing you out into the street. The condo eviction has a 60-day window. The lease on your car runs through January. The insurance ends at the end of this month. I have already paid the property taxes on the condo for this year, because I am not a cruel man and I do not want a lien on my own building. But starting today, you are going to pay your own way. You are going to find a job. You are going to find a job. You are going to find a job. You are going to figure out how grown men live, and you are not going to call me asking for money, because I am not going to send any. He shook his head. Dad, you can't be serious. Sailor and I have a life. We have a life. We have a life I paid for. That is not your life. We have a life I paid for. That is not your life. That is a costume I bought you. It is time to take the costume off. He stood up. His face was red. The tears were gone. Now there was something else, something I recognized from when he was a teenager and didn't get his way. You're punishing us because we didn't invite you to a stupid brunch. No, I said. I am not punishing you. I am ending an arrangement that has been bad for both of us. The brunch is just how I figured it out. Sailor's parents would never do this to us. Sailor's parents have not done anything to you. Sailor's parents have not done anything for you either, as far as I can tell. You're going to regret this, Dad. When we have kids, you're going to regret this. I looked at him, my boy, 35 years old, standing on my porch threatening me with grandchildren I had not yet met. I said, Hudson, if you ever have children, I would love to know them. I would love them very much. But I am not going to be their grandfather's checkbook the way I have been your father's. So if you bring them around, you bring them around because you want me to know them, not because you want something. Are we clear? He didn't answer. He turned around. He walked down the steps. He got in his car, my car, and he drove away. I sat on that porch for the rest of the afternoon. The next 2 weeks were quiet. Then they got loud again. Sailor's mother called Whit. Whit called me. He said, Beaufort, she's offering to mediate. I told Whit to politely decline. Sailor's father called me directly. The cardiologist. He said, Beaufort, my daughter is going through a very difficult time. I said, Doctor, I am sure that with your resources, you are well positioned to help her through it. He hung up on me. Hudson did not call again for 3 weeks. When he did, he asked me if I would meet him for coffee. Just coffee, not at the ranch, not at his condo, a neutral place. He suggested a diner halfway between us. I went. He looked thinner. He looked tired. He was wearing a polo shirt I didn't recognize. And I realized after a minute that it was because Sailor was not the one picking out his clothes anymore. He was alone. She had moved back to her parents' lake house, he said, while they figured things out. He had gotten a job. Not a great job. A job answering phones at an insurance brokerage that an old college friend's father owned. It paid $41,000 a year. He said, Dad, I want to tell you something. I'm not asking for anything. I just want to tell you. I waited. He said, When Mom died, I think I started to disappear. And I think you let me. And I think Shayla came along right after, and she gave me a place to put myself, and it felt like a real life, but it wasn't real. I knew it wasn't real. I just didn't want to look at it. I don't know if you can forgive me for the brunch. I don't even really know if you should, but I wanted you to know I see it now. I see what I did. I didn't say anything for a long time. Then I asked him if he wanted another cup of coffee. He said yes. We sat in that diner for almost 3 hours. We didn't fix anything. I didn't write him a check. He didn't ask. We talked about his mother. We talked about my father, the hardware store man, who he had barely known. He asked me, for the first time in his life, what it had been like to lose my brother when I was a boy. I told him. I had never told him before. He cried. I cried too, a little. When we got up to leave, he hugged me in the parking lot. He held on for a long time. Then he got in his old beat-up Honda, which he had bought for $3,200 off a guy from work, and he drove home to the studio apartment he was renting on the east side of the city. I drove back to the ranch. That was 2 years ago. We are okay now. Not great. Okay. He calls me on Sundays. He has come out to the ranch 6 times. He helped me fix the back fence last spring. He still works at the insurance brokerage, although they promoted him last fall, and he says he likes it. He has not gotten back together with Sailor. They are divorced now. Quietly. No drama. I think she found someone with a bigger family fortune, although I don't ask, and Hudson doesn't volunteer. I sold the condo. I sold the building it was in, too. I gave half the money to a scholarship fund at the community college in my late wife's name. I kept the other half. I'm 65 years old, and I don't need much, but I do need some. I do not regret any of it. I want to say one more thing, and then I'll stop. If you are a parent listening to this and you recognize yourself in any of it, I want you to know that you are not too late. I thought I was too late. I thought my boy was lost. I thought I had ruined him by loving him the wrong way for 35 years. I want to tell you that the day I stopped being his wallet was the day I started being his father again. It hurt. It hurt both of us. But it was the only honest thing I had left to give him. A checkbook is not love. I learned that on a Tuesday in October, on a porch in central Tennessee with the sun going down behind my cattle. And when my daughter-in-law called me that next morning and asked if I had wired the money, I told her I'd handle it, and I did. Didn't I tell you? I think about that Tuesday afternoon a lot. The phone call from Sailor. The mimosa getting warm. The 70 people in the backyard who were not me. And I think about how, for the longest time, I believed I was being a good father by writing checks. I thought love was something you proved with a signature on a line. I thought a man who could afford to give was obligated to give, and a son who took the gifts was somehow showing his appreciation just by accepting them. I was wrong about all of it, and the price of being wrong was 35 years. Here is what I have come to understand. Sitting on this porch with the cattle down by the creek and my wife gone now for 8 winters. Every choice we make plants a seed. When I bought Hudson that first pickup truck at 16, instead of making him save for one, I planted a seed. When I called the dean to get him into a college he hadn't earned, I planted another. When I paid for the wedding, the condo, the Italy trip, the kitchen, the country club, I was not raising a son. I was building a man who could not stand up without me underneath him. And one day that man looked around at his life and decided I did not match the furniture. That is the law of it. You cannot give a person a life they did not work for, and then be surprised when they do not value yours. But I want to say something else, because I do not want this to end as a bitter old man's sermon. There is a way back even from this. It is hard and it is slow, and it requires you to do the one thing most of us refuse to do, which is to look honestly at the part you played. I had to admit that Hudson did not become who he became in spite of me. He became who he became because of me. The brunch did not happen to me. The brunch was the harvest of seeds I had been planting since he was a baby. So if I have any wisdom to leave behind, it is this. Strength is not in the checkbook. Strength is in the word no. Spoken with love, spoken early, spoken often. Wisdom is not in shielding the people you love from every cold wind. Wisdom is in letting them feel the cold so they learn to build a fire. And character is not something you can buy your child the way you buy them a car. Character is forged when a young person carries their own weight and discovers that they can. Hudson is carrying his weight now. He is 37 years old and he is just starting. And there is something almost sad about that. And something almost beautiful too. He calls me on Sundays. He fixed the back fence with me last spring. When he came up the driveway that day with his arms full of fence posts he had bought with his own $41,000 paycheck, I saw my father in him for the first time. The hardware store man, quiet hands, honest work. It took everything I had to give him the gift of taking everything away, but I would do it again. I would do it sooner. That, I think, is what I want you to take from this. Whatever season you are in, it is not too late to stop being someone's wallet and start being their parent. The two things are not the same. They have never been the same. And the sooner we know the difference, the sooner the people we love can know it too.